don't ruin them, don't damage with, of course, as finance minister, with tax. That is difficult for me, of course. So you are really in a dilemma of, on the one hand, on the other hand, there is also some disruption which is felt by the business. For example, the retail business who closed, and then they go now to be in online business. Many of young generation doesn't buy the clothes through the store anymore. They just actually doing through the online. And that is creating a lot of real tension for us as the government to respond. How you can create a level playing field that is allowing the old model of business to transform into new one with a less minimum disruption. There is also a new convergence in terms of the old business see that, oh, in order for them to survive, you have to adopt technology. So there is a synergy, convergence, or merger, or cooperation between them, between the old model into the new model. So it's a good positive in terms of how economy should develop. But I must say in this case, in closing, for government, we will continue need to first watch, communicate, and engage with this technology company or the investors, potential. First, to define and design what kind of investment environment. I've been dealing with Google, with Amazon, interested to come or is already here. Apple is actually providing. And then also our own technology-based company, and they're giving me a lot of lists of what kind of tax policy, of course, that is, they say that we want the government of Indonesia to provide us with this. And for me, we have to then respond, what is the guideline for this? Of course, there is a World Bank, OECD, IMF providing all this kind of policy platform that we could provide. The only thing that is good in this kind of conversation with all those investor or potential investor, I said that you have a very high reputation. So for you to come to the country like Indonesia and being seen that you just want to take a profit is not good for your reputation. So what we need to do is, let's define what we call it the fair taxation treatment. Is there any guideline? I think OECD is doing it. So let's look at those, even what we call it best practice, although the practice is still very few, but we call it best practice anyway. And then we discuss. So there is at least a platform as starting to discuss with them what they expect in terms of the taxation, tax treatment, and so on. So second one is how we are going to make them to become more having a positive impact, more inclusive in this case if you talk. And that is something which have to do with how Indonesia can prepare a lot of human scale, human capacity that they allowing them. And I think on that, for many Indonesia in a big city is not a problem. My worry is more of those who will left behind. Because Indonesia is a big country and not necessarily all educated, young, which is smart. And so this is all the portion that the government need to respond. On the winner side, I think it's fine. But we are 260 million. We have to make sure that no one left behind, and how technology can solve our problem on making sure that no one left behind, and service delivery on education, health, and making sure that the quality can be improved.
So the challenge clearly you are facing is not to stifle the entrepreneurial spirit that exists in Indonesia, but at the same time ensuring that there is a level playing field
and inclusive
in this country with such a vast population, of course. Phil, I know before you came here on stage on Twitter, you let your followers know on Twitter you're going to be here and the topic that you'll be talking about. And I believe you crowdsourced some of the topics and wanted to know from your followers all over the world, but perhaps mostly in Rwanda, what they want to hear on this particular panel, what they want to hear said, what they want to hear. What did you come up with? What can you share with us?
So the question I asked them is, how do you see Africa winning the fourth industrial revolution? Because we know that Africa, we've missed essentially the first, second, and the third. We were still playing catch up on those ones, but it doesn't have to be that way for the fourth industrial revolution. So if there is one keyword that I heard loud and clear, it was leadership. And leadership, we all know that it's about connecting the dots. But the problem is, which dots do you connect? There is taxation, there is policy, there is youth, there is entrepreneurship. The best way of knowing where the dots are and connect them is ask the people. Yep. Crowdsource it. So that's what I did. And on top of that, of leadership, I had three other things. Number one is connect everyone. If you think about the impact that mobile, smart device can have on kids' education, on maternal health, or farmers' productivity, I would say that we are not putting enough, as government and private sector, enough to prioritize connectivity as a fundamental human rights. And we don't need to wait for 2030. I can actually sacrifice a few kilometers or miles of grid connectivity because I know that the households are going to power their way through prosperity using solar or microgrids. But make sure, even if it was going to be for free, for people living under $2 a day, make sure that they have their smartphones in their hands. So that's number one. Number two is empower the next generation. So recently there was a global competition on innovation organized by a company called Nokia, which is an telecom infrastructure company. And the global winners were a team from young people from Senegal. So what they did is they designed a virtual reality set that allows to conduct science experiments without the need of a physical lab or consumables. Now, talk about future unicorns or talk about jobs of the future. This is not something that governments can sit in their boardrooms and create. And number three, and finally, embrace change and think exponential. Rwanda is known for being the first country that launched drones for delivering emergency blood and products. Overnight, the time for delivering life-saving products reduced from 4 hours to 15 minutes. But this had to require that myself, I was Minister of Technology and coordinating this initiative to bring together the people from the health sector, the civil aviation, and of course from the finance, because they are the ones who pay the bill. And then we were able to put this project together in just 6 months. So imagine if we had to plan the improvement of health logistics, the analog or the linear way like we do in most of other things, including SDGs, by the way. What we could have produced is probably, after putting millions of dollars, an annual 10% improvement, and we would have been very proud of it. So, as leaders representing powerful institutions, sectors, and countries, we should embrace the change and especially let our young people innovate the way to the future for us.
And leadership, of course, leading is what Strive is doing. You are leading by example, certainly in the private sector, by connecting the dots and bringing people together through your business. We talked about the role of government here quite a bit. What support are you encountering, or shall we be honest, also what obstacles are you encountering from governments and policymakers on your way to expand your business?
Thank you. I like that last word, obstacles. This is a room full of policymakers. You guys are an obstacle most of the time to us entrepreneurs. If we are going to transform our economies, we have to get out of the way of young people. You know, what stuns me, we operate in more than 30 African countries, is just how difficult it is from one country to another. Yep. I'm being honest. It is, what stuns me is, you know, why can't you learn from one another? Good policies, good ideas. We do it in business. If I see Apple do something that's great, I'm onto it. We call it fast following. See, we need a new way of approaching policy making. Perhaps if I can introduce a new expression here. I'd like policymakers to be entrepreneurial. We need entrepreneurial policy making for the generation we are in. And that's the way you stop being an obstacle as a policymaker. We can put financial inclusion across Africa overnight, but 90% of the policies stop us. The moment we get there, you tax us. How do we do it? I look at Africa today. We're not going to get to the fourth industrial revolution. We're lying to ourselves because the investment now going in to telecommunications infrastructure is falling very quickly. Why? Because policymakers are not putting the policies to encourage serious private sector investment in infrastructure. So we have to revisit the way we do policy. I'm sorry to say that to you, but now you can be entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Well, your aim is not to make new friends here. That's clear. But it's clear. I appreciate your honest words, and very much, of course, we see the conflicting sides here on this panel about what an entrepreneur needs and wants, and of course, what a policymaker or finance minister in this particular case needs and wants, and also European Investment Bank, of course, at some point is also in the mix. Would you echo what Strive was just saying, Mr. Fayol, about policymakers being not the solution but the problems when it comes to providing for inclusive growth? Putting you in a tough spot.
I'm objected to that, actually. So after he answered, I'm going to answer.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked and surprised. Who would have known? Who would?
First,
Oh, Fayol, are you sure that you gave it to me?
Please.
He's my old friend, so I know that.
That's all right. And I'm sitting between you and Strive, so nothing is going to happen.
So Strive is a good friend, and
Yes.
that's why we are actually with Melinda is commissioning this one. First, I think I do understand point of view from Strive that seeing the policymaker, especially finance minister in this case, as an obstacle. I think I sympathy with that view. Because most of the time also, we, as a policymaker, we also learn a lot. But I'm objected that there is a stereotyping like that, because many governments actually learn a lot. In our case, Indonesia, President Jokowi is coming from the small, medium enterprise background. And now he's become my president, my boss. So he actually asking me a lot, but you always make a problem for many SME in Indonesia. Not SME my name, that SME, small, medium enterprises. And I mean, the tax, you have to make it simpler. The custom, you have to serve the public. And that is really a good instruction. It's really pressing us that you cannot just do this president saying that everything is going to be fine, I'm going to handle it. No, he constantly, because he suffered from that tax treatment in the past, tax audit, custom. So it's really giving us a very high bar. And then for us to respond to this kind of situation, not only that he's our boss, but the boss is really the people then in this case. He is elected by people of Indonesia. So how we are going to be able to respond to this kind of very real, fighting our own bureaucracy tendency, formulating a good policy, and making sure that change is going to deliver. I think technology can give us that kind of solution. If you become open, transparent, I have social media, people can complain every day about, oh, Ibu, there is something in this tax department, I'm harassing by that. Some point, somebody is even making a video of how the custom treating them when they are just traveling from abroad to Indonesia. So the correction can be very fast. But what I'm saying here, technology can help us to be accountable and responsive. But second one also, don't underestimate that the policymaker is also thinking. In the Ministry of Finance, my own ministry, almost now 60% of my staff is millennial. really challenge them. Hey, I always said that we have to understand millennial. My own millennial, I want to understand. What is your own thinking about your own job? How you are going to engage with millennial, which is not finance minister. So it's a very interesting dynamic. I don't want to give the stereotyping that all policymaker is the gray hair, old, and baby boomer, and we are dealing with a totally new population, millennial, that we know nothing in this case. I don't think that kind of thing is actually true. It's a really interaction, but we have to admit, as a policymaker, the most important battle is how we are going to fight the tendency of bureaucratization. So there is a good idea, and then you put it in your institution, and then they are slowly but sure die, because it will swallow by your bureaucracy. And this is exactly how you create a dynamic of how idea can continue thrive or even alive, and then become changing the culture of your bureaucracy. I think that's, but I'm optimistic. The technology openness, and I mentioned to Melinda earlier that I